Feral Druid tanks are saved, Shamans got a little bit of a nerf, and Warlocks got quite a large buff, as well as some more hot fixes and some unannounced hot fixes that will actually change a lot of things going on in the game. Like a ridiculous gold farm that I made a video about earlier today has been hot fixed, and I'll get into all of these right now. So first, with the major change, the big one, I think personally, is that we have finally seen a change in where the runes are for Druid tanks. Feral Druids had to choose between Mangle and Lacerate, and Lacerate was actually probably your best threat modifier. Like, you had to choose Lacerate, but you need Mangle to buff your raid. Well, no longer is this the case because Lacerate is being moved off of the hand slot onto the leg slot. So now it gets rid of having Savage Roar or Skull Bash as a Feral Druid that's not really doing anything in your leg slot. And on that note, Skull Bash, the interrupt that you see I don't even have because it's only useful in PvP, is actually moved now to the hand slot. So replacing Lacerate, they're swapping spots. Also, the threat modifier of Mangle was significantly increased, so Feral Druids will have a ton more threat. And in last phase, they got a huge buff to their swipe threat modifier, so Feral Druids are looking incredibly powerful right now. And the last adjustment for Ferals was that the Star Surge rune, or the Star Surge ability, will now no longer consume your clear casting procs. And the Star Surge rune or ability is so good, mostly because it's so cheap. Look at this, 10 mana. So this was being consumed for your actual free procs whenever you had clear casting to get a free cast. It was actually wasting a ton of mana, and this has been fixed. Hopefully it's a little bit of tuning for Balanced Druid, but it's probably not enough at all to see how Balanced Druid will perform. And I say that in reference to some classes like Warriors being able to already do 4,000 DPS on some of these fights. And they're definitely gonna be hitting 5k DPS on things like Morphaz, as you can see in the background. This is Alondo who messed up some of his CDs and doing 3.5k DPS on this fight. You can also see a lot of the other classes are performing well here. We have Enhanced Shamans, we have Feral Druids, all physical classes are looking really solid, and I will have a DPS tier list coming out on the channel tomorrow. And onwards to Paladins. Paladins in their helm slot have two amazing runes for Holy Paladins: Fanaticism, which gives you 18% crit, and Light's Grace, which actually reduces the cast time of your Holy Light. Now, these runes have now been separated because you would always choose the crit over the Holy Light reduction, and now Light's Grace is on the leg slot. Out here competing against, I'm not even sure, I think it's Divine Sacrifice or Exorcism, or yeah, okay, it's now in the leg slot, so you can actually use both of these. It's a really nice change. As for Rogues, Focused Attacks, the rune that gives you 2 energy every time you crit has been buffed to now give you 3 energy every time you crit. I'm not sure if this will be viable now in PvE, but Rogues are in a really solid spot this phase already. And for Rogues, Fiery Weapon was actually proccing Combat Potency and Deadly Brew. This was pretty much putting up poisons as well as giving you extra energy, just having Fiery Weapon. This was kind of a mistake. This has now been fixed. It no longer does that. And the Shaman Overcharge rune, the rune that basically allowed you to do infinite AoE damage as a shaman with Lightning Shield, has now been nerfed a little bit to have an ICD of 3 seconds. So now it won't just infinitely proc instantly, doing thousands and thousands of damage every second if you have a big pull. For Warlocks, Unstable Affliction, your Affliction dot or your Affliction rune has been buffed massively. It's literally been buffed 120% extra damage. Now, this means that the ability from this, where you dispel it and it was already doing 648 damage when you dispel it with literally 0 spell power, that is being more than doubled. So you're gonna see people get one shot by this being dispelled in PvP. It can also crit, by the way, so you're definitely going to see this hit people for like 2,500 with spell power and a crit, maybe even more, upwards of like 3,000 to be brutally honest. So watch out if you see this in PvP now. It should be viable in PvE, but if you see this on you in PvP, like, don't dispel it. You'll just one-shot yourself. They also made it so that Warlocks get life tap, returning mana to their pets as well. So whenever you life tap, your pet will also get mana mana back, and in Metamorphosis, your Master Demonologist talent now appropriately gains threat generation from the Imp and Felguard. It was just a little bit buggy, giving you threat reduction, so this is a nice fix. Unstable Affliction for Warlocks now is also affected by Haunt's damage increase, as well as if your dots crit from your Pandemic rune, it will trigger Dance of the Wicked, giving you a little bit of extra dodge. So this makes you a little bit more tanky. It's a really nice change they've added. And Warrior's Victory Rush was buffed from giving you 10% of your HP back to now giving you 30% of your HP, which is just going to make it a lot easier for you in open world PvP or just during the leveling process. It's not going to be used in the raids, but definitely a nice quality of life change here. And Warrior's Gladiator stance now properly is coded as stance number 4. It was coded as stance number 1, meaning every time you learned this rune, you would actually have to recode all of your macros. It's crazy, but they did fix this actually pretty quickly, so it is now stance number 4, a lot easier for warriors to code their macros. And as for some unannounced tunings, one of the things that was happening for mages was that the Fire Rune Trinket, which would give you 100 extra fire damage on your very next fire spell, was not actually affecting Frostfire Bolt. So you actually just got 100 extra fire damage, spell damage, just for an entire minute. This has now been hotfixed, so this should be fixed in the game. You won't be able to do this. Also, the gold farm from the Nightmare Resonance Crystal Trinket has been nerfed to the point of some of the spawns that you were doing from this, from my video earlier today, were on a 6-minute respawn timer. Now it should be a 1-hour respawn timer, making it a lot harder to get some crazy things like epics, which actually reportedly have a pretty low drop rate. I think the people that sent a lot of info for this actually got really lucky, but the epics are supposedly to have like a normal drop rate from these. And 2 of the Darkmoon cards have kind of been buffed. Darkmoon card Overgrowth, which works kind of like Revitalize. If you heal someone, it gives them a little bit extra mana, rage, or energy. If every healer had this in the raid and they were all spamming hots on like a warrior or a rogue, they'd pretty much probably have like infinite energy or rage, but this proc chance was increased from 5% to 10%. As well as Darkmoon card Decay, the one that will stack up and then do a little bit of single target damage, is actually now properly triggering from ranged attacks as well as just normal abilities and normal attacks. And lastly, the best food in the game that you can get right now by far, the Jungle Durian, giving you 3,200 HP and 6,600 mana each time you eat these. In 30 seconds, obviously, has now been increased from getting 10 of these per turn in of Flask of Atalai Mojo to now getting 20 of these. This is a really nice quality of life change, and you turn these in at Yojamba Isle all the way up here in Stranglethorn Vale. And that should sum up all of the things that are happening in World of Warcraft SOD this week so far. There are some minor changes, nothing too massive right now, but again, some of the classes are doing insane amounts of DPS. Warriors above 3,000 DPS on multiple fights. Rogues, shamans, and melee hunters absolutely pumping damage as well. A little bit less than most warriors, at least when warriors are at some sort of top end, but these classes are all doing really well, all of the physical classes. So again, if you want to see a DPS tier list breakdown for this entire phase, definitely make sure to follow the channel and just watch it tomorrow.